Join us for the next Studio Sojourn, a podcast for agents. Welcome to the Sojourn, and this is our new podcast. We're calling it Studio Sojourn, which is a place where you can come and relax, learn, pick up your feet, and get to know a little bit more about real estate and all of the affiliates that we work with in the company. This is sponsored by the Homes Group, our real estate firm, but we are starting to do a little podcasting because I have a great interest in just what agents do. Real estate is a huge, broad field. And so I'm just a curious person, and I like to know what other folks are doing in the business. And I had the
Great.
opportunity to meet Lakisha Chichester. We were on a bus tour, and I was just fascinated by the work that she does. She has over 10 years of experience in um, probate, and she's worked on the paralegal side as well as real estate side. So without further ado, Lakisha, welcome
Thank
to
you.
Studio Sojourn.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. Thank you for coming, and thank you for being our first guest. I really appreciate it.
I'm honored.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit about what it made you get interested in probate. It's death. It's when people die. Why would you be interested in that?
Well, I first became interested in probate around, I think it was 2007, when my father passed. My mom and dad had just sold their house. They had split up and they had just sold their house and they split the proceeds from the sale of the house. And he put his portion of the proceeds into a new bank account, and then just months later he passed away without a will and without a beneficiary on that bank account. So that was my first introduction to probate.
I know that had to be difficult.
It was
Be very
definitely,
difficult.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You encounter a lot of the myths at that time where you just thought, oh well, we'll go to the bank, get the money, and but it wasn't that simple.
It's not. And that's exactly why we're here today, because I think it's intimidating to a lot of people. I recently lost my mother. My mother
Oh, I'm
didn't
so
have a
sorry.
lot. Thank you. I'm sorry for your loss as well. My mother didn't have a lot, but just the process of probate is like, because I think everybody has to go through it regardless. At least I think so, but that's what we're going to break down today and
Okay.
learn about. So, um, you told me what pulled you into probate, and then what did you learn early on that made this stick with you? You said that your father dying, but was it something else like your legal experience?
So at that time, I didn't have legal experience. That was the first time I had ever even heard of a paralegal because most of the work that we did, we were working with a law firm, but most of our day-to-day interaction was with a paralegal. So I didn't, had never heard of a paralegal before then. And
Really?
that was in 2007. So after that experience, we did some digging and we found out like what documents we needed to have in place so that my mom could have better protection. So me and my husband, we had already had a will because of what happened with my father. So we made sure we were in place.
Mhm.
And then I think shortly after me and my family started to work on that for my mom. And so we got her will, we got all of her documents in place. We made sure everything had a beneficiary or a transfer on death, and then she passed away. So to have experience with someone who had nothing in place, and then to see it with someone who had everything in place and how much smoother that process was, I became interested in that because I would like, again, working with these paralegals, and I decided to go to school to learn more about that. And that's how I ended up becoming a paralegal. I graduated from Meredith College in 2012. Yeah, I graduated from Meredith in 2012. I got my paralegal certification. And ironically, my very first positions were in real estate, not in probate.
Okay. So this is what probably sparked your interest in real estate.
That's what sparked my interest in real estate. By the time I moved here, so I'm originally from New York. I bought my first house. I think I shared this story with you. Purchased my first house in 1998. Back then, I didn't know anything about the home buying process, and me and my husband went to go get a loan to purchase this home, and I was heartbroken when they told my husband, "Well, you might want to leave her off because her credit score is." So that's how I first learned. That's where I first learned that you can have a mortgage. You can own a home together and only one person's name be on the mortgage. So even though that happened and I was devastated at the time, this just shows you how God works. That set us up for a real estate business that we had after that, in which we've always owned we've always we held our property with one mortgage at a time, so it allowed us to be in this position where we were constantly able to buy and sell. So like you can see where all of these things kind of
Right.
point upward
Right.
to what I do today.
Right. I heard a lot of things. So I heard the paralegal interest. I heard you mentioned that you sparked an interest in real estate. And it
Hmm.
sounds like you and your husband also started some investment building of properties. Wow.
Hmm.
All right. Let's see if we can unpack all of that. So, um, what mistakes do you see when people are handling probate issues?
The biggest mistake that I see is that people start so late. They By the time they're either contacting a realtor or the law firm, they have missed mortgage payments, they've not paid taxes, they're not paying the homeowner's insurance, and by that time their home is in jeopardy, or someone is has mismanaged funds. And when I say mismanaged, not stolen, but they've used estate funds to pay for things that you technically are not allowed to use estate funds for, like your mortgage. Like some people think, well, since if a loved one has left me this home and this home has a mortgage, then the estate is supposed to pay the mortgage, and that's not always the case. So
What are the
those are the
estate
mistakes
funds
that I see.
used for? What are those funds used for?
That process is really to pay back creditors, is to make creditors whole. The process is not so that you end up with a home or that it pays off the mortgage. I mean, there are other tools that you can use to make sure that happens, like having mortgage insurance and things like that. So those are the biggest mistakes that I see, is people start too late. They have an idea of what they want to happen with their assets, and they think that that's automatic, like they don't have to do anything. Like if I have children and I pass away, everything goes to the children. And again, that these things are not always true.
My gosh. So I guess because of my recent experience, how do you approach someone when they're grieving and tell them, like, and they're overwhelmed? I am speaking from my own personal experience, and I know that other people may feel this way too. When you are grieving and you have a loved one, whether, regardless of what member of your family or friends it might be, when you're in the grieving process, you are overwhelmed and you
You're
can't.
overwhelmed.
Stuff is so intricate, like not paying a mortgage with the estate funds. How would you know that? So, how do you approach someone when they're in the midst of grieving?
Well, usually I find that by just providing information is so helpful for people. I mean, really, just the information of what the timelines are, how do they get things in order, because there are simple things that you can do, like getting documents in order, knowing who the creditors are. And even though I think society today, it makes it hard to just be in a grieving process, because depending what your relationship are, we have to go to the funeral home. There's so much planning that you have to do today when someone passes. It really is like you got to get down to business, and there's not a lot of time to grieve. That's why I think it's so important, circling back to your first question, how important it is to have things in place from the get go so that you can grieve and you're not spending all of your time Listen, the mortgage is due the mortgage can be due the next day after someone passes, and the mortgage company, they don't care about that. So I think if we spent more time on the front end, particularly when we're purchasing homes, to think about what we want to have done with our assets and plan accordingly, you can grieve.
Wow, that you just said a mouthful. My best friend always says, "Stay ready so you don't have to get ready,"
That there you go. That is
and
definitely the case.
that is what I'm hearing here. Wow. Okay, so you said be prepared. What does that look like? What are the steps? Who do they need to talk to? Who do you have anybody on your team or people that you refer to? How do those? How do you? Where do you start?
Yes, I work with estate planning attorneys. So estate planning attorneys is where you want to go, depending on your assets. So if you're talking about, you may have someone who doesn't have a lot of assets. They may not even own a home, but they may have bank accounts.
Like my
So
mother.
it's
My
yeah.
mother didn't
So
have a lot.
yes, but so it's important for you to have beneficiaries on all of those documents, because if you have beneficiaries, for the most part, those bypass the probate process. So if your account says, and I know sometimes in our community and culturally, people feel like if I put someone's name on the bank account, they're gonna steal it. But there are things that you can do that it's pay on death. So
That's
pay
a
on death,
that's a podcast for another day.
when I tell you, for another day.
All right.
But you have pay on death where they don't have access to your account, but the minute they come in and you've passed away, those assets transfer and they transfer outside of probate. So you can do that. Every account should have some type of beneficiary where you're identifying what you want to see. I think asking the questions is so important. Like you just said, if you go to open a bank account and you say this, I want to make sure these go to my ear. That way, you're making sure you fill out all the proper paperwork at that time.
That's great advice. So I'm assuming that this is just as easy as when you go to your bank and they say, who do you want to name in the event of an emergency, and those are the people that you put down. I'm assuming it's that simple, but I guess you need to go to your bank
It
and make
is.
sure that
Yeah, because
if
it's usually that simple. There's a pay on it. They're usually called pay on death or transfer on death. And it just says, when I pass, this is who I wanted to go to. And every bank will have their different form or process, but you want to make sure that that gets done. Because another mistake is, you plan to do it when you open the account. You go home and you may even fill the paper out and sign it. But as a paralegal, I've seen many times where they present a signed paper, but no one has ever turned that back into the bank, and so the bank
okay.
doesn't have it.
So this leads to my next question. What are some of the things that people forget about timeline? Like, is there when how long do you have to grieve before you have to start going to the? Do you need to do this right away? Like, how much time do you have
Well,
to address these things?
well, a lot of that depends on what your situation is. So again, if you have bank accounts, and there are timelines for posting the creditors, there are other things that you can do that if you are able to pay your mortgage. So one of the good things about North Carolina is, it used to be, when you get your mortgage documents, there is and I want to try to not get in the weeds, but there is a clause that if there's any transfer, that mortgage is now due. But in North Carolina, there's a statute that allows the heirs to go ahead and continue to make mortgage payments. The death of a loved one doesn't trigger the due on sale clause. So that gives them the opportunity to continue to pay the mortgage and live in the home, as long as they're making these
Are they allowed to
payments.
sell the home? This is where the real estate comes in. Are they allowed to
This
sell the
is this is
home?
where the real estate comes in. So whether they are or not they're allowed to sell the home, again, depends on how things were set up. So in North Carolina, when the person passes, the home automatically transfers to their heirs. Who those heirs are depend on, did they have a will or did they not have a will? Are they currently married? Was there a previous marriage? Were there children from another marriage? All of that is going to determine who gets what. And if you don't know that in advance, it's very important to sit down with an attorney to straighten that out. Even if you don't plan to use the attorney for the probate process, I encourage people to sit down with an attorney, explain your situation, and get some guidance on dates and timelines. But if you're making payments on mortgages and things like that, you usually have more time to get your affairs in order. But it's surprisingly a lot that I find when you mention mistakes, you might have spouses that don't know that one spouse had business debt, and it becomes kind of like a fishing expedition to kind of find these things out. Predators come out of the woodwork, heirs come out of the woodwork, children outside of marriage come out of the woodwork. So it's very hard to have us, you should do this. It's really going to depend on what your situation is.
Wow. That you literally answered my next question, which was what are some of the sticky situations that could hold it up? And I'm guessing these kids coming out of the woodwork, predators and all of that could hold it up. Wow. Okay, so the business side of it. If everything is in order and they come to you and you help them to connect with an attorney, um, how long does probate usually take from start to finish?
Um, Probate, again, I'm I'm going to sound like a lawyer here, but it depends. You can have a simple estate where you only come into probate with one asset. Um, I had an instance where everything was set up. They had their will, everything, but there was one account, there was an IRA where the deceased did not put a beneficiary on. So that was the asset that had to go to probate, and there were no creditors. You want to keep you don't want to have all of these assets going to probate because there's a fee based on the dollar amount of these assets. So again, going back to another question, if you have things in place, you reduce the amount of time probate takes and you reduce the cost of probate.
The cost. So I guess you can't get into what the cost is, but is there like what can people anticipate? Because I think that that's one of the intimidating factors. Is like this is going to be very expensive. I have to hire an attorney. I have to do all of this stuff. What does that look like?
So if you don't have a house to bring in or anything, let's just say you have you might have an IRA in it and that IRA has a couple of $1,000 in it. You only gonna pay a percentage of that
IRA.
fee. And the how much the percentage is for North Carolina is escaping me, but it's easy to look up. It'll tell you what the percentage is. As a matter of fact, I'm glad you asked that question. I would encourage, if you have an estate that's $25,000 or less, there is an expedited process that you can go through. So if that process is hardly costs anything and it's expedited because there's less than $25,000 in assets. If you owe more than 25,000, if you have more than $25,000 in assets, and that's bank accounts, a home, anything that would be an asset that's being brought into probate, that is definitely going to cost more money and take more time. And the more heirs there are, is going to also determine how much time it takes. Are all the heirs in agreement? Because most of these are going to require people to be in agreement.
So do you have to have an attorney, or is this something you can do on your own, or can does your real estate agent navigate that for you? Like how soon? What do you do? What do you do? Do you have
So
to have an attorney? If you
it's
have less than
something.
25, do you have to have an attorney?
No, you don't have to. You could probate is something that you can do pro se, and pro se is you don't have any representation. So it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely something that you can do pro se. It's
Mm-hmm.
not something that I recommend that you do pro se because it usually costs you more time and money because the clerks are not allowed to give you legal advice. Your realtor is not allowed to give you realtor advice. So even me as a realtor, I make sure I'm providing information and not legal advice.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
I do my best to give information that I am privy to, but I don't cross the line into giving legal advice. So I
Gotcha.
encourage folks to sit down with an attorney. And sometimes people will say, "Well, I can't. They charge for the consultation. I can't afford it." You're likely going to lose more than that because you have to pay inventory fees. I know people that have accounts that are open that they're paying fees on 3, 4 years. The account can be closed, but they don't have the information to move forward.
Wow.
And the clerks will not give you legal advice. So I know someone who didn't do the $25,000. They didn't do the expedited process because they didn't know that there was an expedited process where they could have saved money because they were this IRA was only $5,000. So they opened up a full probate when they didn't need to.
Whew. Hmm. Okay. So I was going to ask, like, how do you market for this? I mean, now that you are leaning on the real estate side, are you like 50/50 paralegal real estate? Or how, are you devoting a
Yeah,
lot of your
I
attention to that?
Yes, because really what
Mhm.
my goal, so as a realtor, I have general transactions that I do. My passion is things that are tied to legal because I love that I can fill in that knowledge gap. I think there's a big knowledge gap, and I realized from being on the paralegal side that all that people don't realize, and this is both other realtors and clients, that real estate is a legal process that's kind of wrapped up like a sales process. But it's from start to finish, it is a legal process.
I think that
And
if I could interrupt you for a minute, I think that's
please do.
an important thing to ask and remember, because I think people think that real estate is just sales,
It's just sales.
like buying a car. It is not like buying a car.
No,
This is a very legal process that will affect your children, your loved one, anyone your beneficiaries, anybody who's connected to you. And it is truly the seed of growth in your family tree. And
exactly.
I don't think people understand that when
They
they talk
don't.
to real estate people. They think we're just salesy, salesy,
You
salesy, but
think you're
we
just
are.
selling, yeah, like you're just selling a house. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes we perpetuate that when we use words like agreement instead of contract. This is an agreement, but this is a contract with contractual terms that once you sign, that you are obligated by these terms. So it's very important to know what those terms are and how you will be affected by those terms. Now, fortunately, most of the time it is just a sales transaction. Nothing goes wrong. It's not until something goes wrong that now everyone's looking into this contract for these terms that really you need to understand beforehand, which is the same as probate. You're just hoping for the best, and that's not really the best way to move forward.
Wow. Um, how do you balance the sensitivity of this emotional connection that you probably make with your clients and getting the job done?
I think because I've been through it and I've been through it on both sides when, again, nothing is in order and everything's going wrong and when things went well. So I think because I've been on both sides, again, I can fill in that knowledge gap. I know what they're going through. And I feel like just being able to be someone who can provide information is just so helpful for these families.
Can you, without spilling the beans on anybody's information, but can you share someone's story that you had to help? Maybe it was crazy, maybe it was sticky. Do you have any like interesting stories that you could share with us about that you've done?
Yeah, I had one this year where it was a husband and wife, they had no children. And they divorced, and then the wife passed away. And let's let's just say, let me see how I can say this. Let's just say one, she after her divorce, she went to a law firm to get a new will, and the new beneficiary turned out to be someone at the law firm. So there was a lot of let's just say a lot went down behind that because that was obviously challenged by a friend. There were pets involved, and these wills included leaving a lot of money to pets, and then stipulations on how those pets would be cared for. Um, in a small town where everyone knew this family because they were very prominent. So it was very hard to get someone to even assist with the closing because they recused themselves because there was such a tumultuous relationship with this couple after the divorce. So we went to pick up pets, we had to move pets. It was very interesting.
So did the money from the estate take care of these pets?
So the money, the pets finally got to their right place. There were complaints made to the bar association. So there were people at this particular law firm being investigated. I can't recall what the outcome of that was. Um, but it was definitely, there were sheds on the property that I had to open up and go on the real estate side. I'm looking at sheds and yeah,
Immense.
I learned a lot. And then that actually led to another avenue that I'm working on is putting something together for people who don't have heirs, who don't, like this couple. They were a couple, but they never had children. So where does your stuff go? And if you have animals and pets, this particular person had a parrot, and I didn't realize parrots live a very long time,
Very long time. Yes.
a very long time.
They might
And
outlive
so,
you.
yeah, and in this case, they did outlive her, and she had very specific instructions for this parrot. So it was a lot.
Okay. So not me, but if another agent wanted to get into this field, what would you recommend how should they start? What should so that they could be credible?
I Most agents already do the part that we can do as agents. So I don't think that I probably shoot myself in the foot here. I don't think that the part where you do real estate needs to change for any particular agent. Any agent can help with a probate client, a divorce client. There are things that you need to know, like the domestic violence. Like you don't want to have an open house for someone who is going through a domestic violence situation. So there's things that you can do like that to make sure you're keeping your client safe in these types of situations. But I think for the most part, most competent realtors have those skills. The other part is very legal in nature, and I would say most realtors, if they don't have that legal background, I would stay away from that because you definitely want to be where you're providing information, not going into legal advice, and you don't want to blur the lines.
I get that. And I don't think you're shooting yourself in the foot at all because at the end of the day, I always say to my team, keep your village is your village. The people who want to work with you want to work with you.
Hmm.
They're not going to want to work with me. And my village is not going to want to work with them. And so I believe that with you having this particular niche and knowledge, I don't think you're shooting yourself in the foot at all. I think that I mean, just like you said, all realtors can do this type of stuff. It's not my
Yeah,
niche. I have helped people through this situation, but if I now that I know you, I probably would refer them over to you and say, "Hey, she can probably better help you than I can." So I think that this is a really good thing to talk about. This is why I, I have this passion for talking to agents because everyone has their lane and there's different lanes, so many different
there
lanes
is.
in this field that we're in that we really we there's enough to go around. There's enough to go around.
There's definitely that. I think it's important. I will say that I think it's important as realtors for us to step up and know when we're not in our lane. So that's what I would say about that. I mean, I think sometimes we want to be in every lane because, you're thinking about that dollar at the end. But I think it's very important to stay in your lane to make sure that you are assisting clients because you may have been able to help a client buy a home, but were you able to point them in a direction in which this home is going to work out for what they truly need based on the situation um that they were in. Like I tell people, I don't know a lot about first time home buyers. So I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I had a first time home buyer and I was able to get her $40,000 in grants while another agent could have got them 100. So Yeah. So there you go. So if I stay out of that lane because I want the best for my client, I then will refer them over because I'm like, I know that if you work with a realtor who does that day to day, they're going to be able to really advocate for you and get every dollar. I'm going to be able to get you a house, but I may not get you every dollar because I don't know everything about that space. So I think it's important to stay in your lane so that the clients that you do assist, you can do it to the best of your ability and theirs.
Do it well. I
Hmm.
I agree. So, how can someone reach you? What is your how do people contact
I'm listed with Lakisha on just about every platform. You can look up my name. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, but only to where Instagram automatically puts it on Facebook. But listed with Lakisha. I'm on with Lakisha on YouTube. So just about anywhere.
Awesome. So listed with Lakisha on
Hmm.
YouTube, listed with Lakisha on
I'm on Facebook,
Facebook,
and that's
and
my website,
and that's your website,
listedwithlakisha.com. Mm-hmm.
listedwithlakisha.com.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being such a generous guest. And
Thank you.
I hope that we can maybe have another conversation again. Maybe we'll get a panel of experts and you can come back. But this has been so informative, and I just appreciate
Definitely.
your
I would love to come back. Like you said, we can do a whole episode on dealing with folks who have some issues with planning for death. We can do a whole episode on that. I'd love to share some tips.
awesome. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Monica.
You're welcome. So this concludes our first podcast, our first episode of the Sojourn. So I'm still working on if that's going to be our podcast name. I think it is though. So this has been a really great time. I hope that you guys come back to visit us again. We're going to talk to a lot of agents. We have other guests lined up, and the goal is to get to 10 before the end of the year, and it's November, so we have a lot to do in the next month and a half. I appreciate your time that you guys have come to spend with us. And remember, always contact a realtor, always contact an attorney. Doing stuff on your own just really prolongs the process. And sometimes you make mistakes, like Lakisha mentioned, where you spent more time and money than you would have if you just sat down and had the conversation. Um, have a good one. Thank you so much, Lakisha.
Thank you.
Join us for the next Studio Sojourn, a podcast for all things real estate.